Hello everyone and welcome back to the Triforce podcast with your three favourite hosts.
The best, the hosts with the most.
I got a question to start the day off with, something was puzzling me last night. I know we're straight into it. We're straight
Deep
into
and
it.
profound?
It's not very profound at all. I was watching, one of the things I think I mentioned it before that I like watching is tennis players freaking out.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you've ever mentioned that before, but it is a joy to watch these people have a meltdown.
They're such babies. They are such babies. Like one call goes against them. It's like 5 minutes of haranguing the umpire. And the guys, it's so stupid because they're down low and the guy's up on that little sort of chair like a lifeguard looking down at them. And they're like just argue. It's like arguing with God or something. It's so ridiculous.
I think there's like a two-pronged thing here. And the thing is, like, what happens is when you get taxi drivers or someone like this who spends their entire life listening to like talk radio, all of this information that's constantly, and they talk it to passengers all the time. They're constantly learning things, right? And so you sit down with a taxi driver and they seem to be always able to tell you something really interesting, but usually slightly wrong or like right wing, or do you know what I mean? Slightly weird.
Sorry, hold on a sec. We were talking about tennis umpires.
Whereas with tennis players, they've spent their entire life playing on a field, out in a tennis court, hitting a racket, not getting any educational information about the world, and therefore they have no fucking knowledge about how to behave as an adult.
But that should be true of every sport. That should be true of every sport.
Every
I don't know if it
sportsman
is.
I've ever met has specced fully into charisma and agility and nothing in wisdom or intelligence. I swear to God. Do you remember when I met that footballer? England footballer, what was his name? Fucking Kyle Walker.
Right.
And he was the most awful man I think I've ever met in my life.
What? Really?
Okay, hang on a second.
He was just so...
When did you meet Kyle Walker?
When did you meet Kyle Walker from the England football squad?
When I did the Fallout 4 brand sponsorship deal where they wanted to appeal to the everyman, the FIFA crowd, the
so
COD
you met
players.
Kyle Walker, the footballer.
Yes, England international.
And you thought he was an awful man?
He's got 75 caps. He's a legitimately good right back. Kept Mbappe in his pocket for much of that
I know,
game.
but he's an incredibly dull and weird and boring man. And I was awkward with him, obviously, because, he's like, who's this fucking nerd making jokes about dwarves and things, He didn't play along, really. He didn't get in on... And he was just not a nice guy, boring, uninteresting.
Well, not nice, like as in, was he rude? Was he mean?
He was a bit aloof.
Okay. I mean, he's an international superstar as well.
He wasn't smart enough to be rude or mean. Right. Do you know what I mean? He was just
Kyle
too dull.
Walker called out within the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Kyle, if you're listening, I know you probably are.
He's a big fan.
I'm just saying that
he's on his own on this one.
I met some Olympians. God bless them. They were quite actually.
They were nice. They were really nice.
They were really, really nice. But again,
that was for the sports day vid that we did a while back. That was a good stream.
Actually, they seemed really grown up, and they wouldn't like slag off the umpire. But I feel like Kyle Walker would. I feel like he'd have an argument with the ref. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's standard footballer. I mean, that's what they do.
That's what they're trained to do.
Oh, so are they? So are you saying that part of a tennis player is to become a man-child?
No,
I just argue these points.
I think tennis players more so than other sports are like the ultimate min-maxers. So I would say yes, they probably are coached somewhat in.
Let me ask you this:
heckling with the refs and stuff.
Do you think that if you heckle a ref, that's likely to go your way on the next decision, or he's going to spite you and vote against you again on the next decision?
If you look at someone like Nick Kyrgios, Australian player, famous for his tantrums on the court, all right? I mean, he makes John McEnroe look very tame by comparison. For older listeners like me, John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. Yeah, cannot be that guy. He's now McEnroe. A well-regarded commentator and all the rest of it, but back in the day, he was a brat.
Memes that we know about are actually going around on TikTok. Do you know what I mean? Surprisingly, these quite iconic meltdowns from history are still pretty. They're still pretty memorable even nowadays.
Yeah. So here's my question. Anyway, I was just watching those meltdown vids, and one of the things you're not allowed to do is the audience or the crowd is not allowed to make a noise while the point is on. Like they're meant to be quiet. So when the guy's about to serve, you're not allowed. If somebody goes, "Hey," they go, "Quiet, please." And I'm
I think
hang on. There are only, as far as I can tell, 3 sports where that is a requirement: tennis, golf, and I guess snooker. I can't think of many others.
Darts.
You're telling me I'm going to take a penalty in football and everybody's allowed to make as much noise as they like? I'm going to try and score something in rugby. I'm trying to make a conversion in rugby. They're going to say, crowd, everybody be quiet, please. Everybody be quiet. Shh, no talking. Why just these sports? And it occurred to me, obviously, they're solo sports. So, I guess the idea is, let them concentrate, everybody be quiet. But one thing I read was that these sports, especially tennis and golf, were sort of the gentlemanly, sort of, the etiquette-based, not for the hoi polloi and the proles. This is for the gentle folk. But what the fuck, man? I mean, you're telling me you're a professional athlete, you do this all day, every day, and some noise when you're trying to play tennis is going to put you off? How come that's not putting off lads taking penalties?
I guess what people could do if they had enough of them was just not shut up, and they can't kick them all out. Could they?
They would. They would. They would
empty the whole stand.
I think they would suspend the game. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's actually against the rules. If you're in the crowd at tennis, you're not allowed to talk. When they all say, quiet, please. They were quiet, please. If you didn't shut up, they boot you out. Yeah, they boot you out. And I'm just thinking, it's weird, isn't it? That the crowd is not allowed to make a noise. At the end of the point, they're allowed to applaud. But why can't I shout when Kyrgios is served? Why can't we all cheer? What's different? Why? And tennis players are like, oh, someone coughed. Hold on. Oh, it's like, what's going on here? You're such a baby. You can't even serve with a noise in the background. It doesn't make sense. How come other athletes can do it and you can't? I just want to understand what's going on.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, when Carl Walker's tested his penalties, he's not having a crowd shouting at him, is he?
No.
Or do they play crowd noise when he does a penalty?
I don't think Kyle Walker's taken many penalties, but
well, he might if it was a penalty shootout and it went deep enough.
I think he has taken.
He might be called upon, but
maybe
he's got 75 caps for England. How many goals is he? I'm going to guess like 2. None. He's never scored for England.
How many caps do you have for England, Lewis? Out of interest, you got a lot to say about a guy who's very accomplished. I'm just asking.
What sport? Because I've been in the Minecraft Championship.
No, you haven't even though. Which one? I don't remember you ever being in a Minecraft Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Race for the Wool, but that's you laid that one on for yourself.
I laid on a race for the wool.
He laid it on himself.
Anyway, I want to talk about something as well because
I
saw something this week that hit the front page of Reddit, as it does periodically. Some whistleblower, military whistleblower. This comes out here from time to time.
This is the UFO thing, right?
Has announced that the US has some non-Earth
exotic materials not of this Earth and not man-made.
Yeah, non-man-made.
That's the claim. Yeah,
right.
Now, interestingly, this guy is not like he's not on the History Channel with wacky hair saying they built the pyramids, man. He's like a relatively normal person, much like these airline pilots that came out. There's a lot of skeptics rightly pointing out things, like eyewitness testimony is dog shit.
But again,
these guys can fly a plane, but they're not experts on viewing aerial phenomena, like all kinds of things like that. But this claim, I mean, I know that America, they had some hearing where they were like, we got to open up. If you've got these files, we need to see them. They're in the public interest. You can't just say, oh, no, it's too secret for you guys. If something's happened, you got to tell us about it. And so there might be something there, but I doubt it. I doubt it.
Well, I mean, okay. How do you feel about UFOs generally, Sips? P-Flax. And when I say UFOs, I mean aliens, not...
It's UAPs.
Right.
That's the more widely
what does that mean?
Unexplained aerial phenomena, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay, sure.
So, because unidentified flying object kind of implies flying saucers, but a UAP gives it a more generic, it could be it's just an aerial phenomena. We don't know what it is. And rather than saying it's a flying object, it might be something else. It might not be an object. It might just be a phenomena of some kind. So I think it is probably a better term. So these UAPs that the U.S. Navy, they unsecretified. I've forgotten the word, so that's the best way I can find to put it.
Declassified.
Declassified, yeah.
Unsecretified, I think, is probably what they say.
I think that sounds better.
Yeah. The sort of footage and these guys saying, well, look at that thing and all this kind of stuff. But there's all kinds of things to do with parallax and something very low to the ocean looks like it's traveling much faster than it is, and things look different through a FLIR lens and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was sort of, in fact, I'm pretty sure we've spoken about this before, but in terms of this new stuff, one guy's come out, like Lois says, and has said there's these exotic materials, and that he's saying, I think there was a British guy came out and said the same thing. He said, I don't know if we have an alien vessel in a hangar, but we've got objects, and we don't know where they came from. or who made them, but we found them. So it's an interesting one for sure.
How do you feel about it though? Like, how do you feel about it? Do you think it's real, Sips?
Yeah. What do you think, Sips?
I don't care if it's real or not, personally.
Really?
I really
don't care.
No, I don't.
But do you think it's real?
I'm not interested in it. I don't know what the big deal would be if it was real. Like, I don't know
hold on.
I don't know what
people's
expectation behind all this is. Like,
wait. You're saying that if it turned out we'd been visited by aliens and we had some remnants of their vessels, you're not interested in that?
I would find it like interesting enough. If it was on the news, I would maybe read it or whatever. But
Are you fucking kidding me, dude? It's like the biggest question of all time.
Well,
aliens visiting Earth, and you're like, eh.
Really? Kind of, yeah.
Because, oh my god!
I don't see why it's like really that huge of a deal. Like it would be like, okay, wow, you know, there's other life out there, but like, I'm assuming there just is other life out there anyway. Like, it's not. Well, you know what I mean?
Correct.
Like, it's not going to change.
Hold on. First of all, it changes everything. It changes
like
everything.
What?
First of all, that we're not alone in the universe.
Okay.
Secondly, that these aliens, if they have come here, have figured out something that we thought previously it was like literal science fiction. There's no way that we could really think of a serious way to get from one place to another in enough time that it wasn't like time dilated to fuck and you ended up going there and your entire civilization had died by the time you got back, all this kind of shit.
Well,
they've got some vessel that can travel between the stars.
And not only that, but there's an implication that they haven't destroyed us already. We're not at war with them. They're not hostile. There's also like the implication that they can, or at least want to communicate with us or are similar to us in some way.
They might be building up to that, like saying, we're going to check it out, we're going to see if they're ready, and then we'll come in and say, hey, look, there's this whole galactic community out there, you can be a part of it. Like, it would be the most fundamental shift imaginable for the entire species.
Okay, if some of that stuff happened, sure, but I don't think anything like that's going to happen. Not in our lifetimes anyway. I don't think it's... Or even our kids' lifetimes. Like, I don't think anything like that is actually.
So what you're
happen.
saying is that you don't actually think it's aliens?
Well, it might be, but I just don't care if it is or not. Like there's probably something out there, but
I'm stunned. I
just don't really give much of a shit.
Wow.
I think people get so bent out of shape about it, like, you know, on this quest for truth or whatever. It's like, okay, fine. Like, if there is something out there, who cares? Like,
God.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is that basically, yes, because this like UFOs Reddit community and stuff, it feels like there's this huge bunch of people who are convinced.
They're like, we're so close, we're gonna find out. It's like, who gives a shit? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not gonna change your life at all. You're still just gonna be some nerd posting on Reddit. Like, you're just gonna find some other shit to put your tinfoil hat on about. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter.
No, I do not. I am not accepting you know what I mean. I do not know what you mean. I am absolutely stunned.
This is why we have the 3 dissenting points on this podcast.
No, of course. That's what makes... If we all just went, yes, that's interesting, then this would be a UFO podcast or UAP podcast.
Wait, so you're actually really interested in UFOs? Like, you read up about them?
Who wouldn't be? Here's the problem.
For example.
Right. That's what I can't believe.
I don't read up about any of that stuff.
So I don't read up about it. If there's a story about it that seems credible... Sure. I'll read it, and I'm interested. I mean, I'm fascinated to think that, first of all, I am a massive skeptic when it comes to the idea that we will ever travel at faster than light and get between places and warp speed and all that shit. I really don't think we'll get there. Right. I think the distance between our star and other stars is so fucking vast, and we're just not built for it. Our brains aren't built for it. Our bodies aren't built for it. Our lifespan is too short. And I just think in terms of the resources and everything, as we understand physics, it would be so costly to get a ship full of people from one place to another at a decent percentage of the speed of light that it would be worth the journey.
Yeah.
And there's nothing near us that we've seen where we're like...
nightmare. I mean, we are these fleshy lumps that need a very small temperature range to survive. And, you know, we'll have to bring all our fucking cows with us.
Right.
And we'll have to bring all that other shit with us.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the radiation, the cosmic radiation constantly bombarding us. So we're going to have this massively thick hull in order to try and survive. In this,
Not to mention that even
difficult...
traveling at that speed, even in space, the vacuum of space, there are like little molecules knocking about, like 1 per meter cubed or something. It'll just be one little rogue hydrogen atom drifting about. If you're traveling at the speed of light, those things are hitting the front of your ship so fast that even those tiny molecules are building up heat on the front of your vessel. So there's so much technology that we'd have to figure out that we're just like, wow, how would we even do that? If someone has done that, and they are our neighbors, and have found us, which is in itself a miracle, that they have found us on this little twisty arm of our fucking galaxy.
Even since broadcasting radio waves, our radio waves over the last 100 years have only gone to about, 100 stars or something, or 1,000 stars compared to like the entire galaxy. It might be more, but
we've looked at those pretty closely with a big telescope, and there's fucking nout there. Like most of the ones we found, we're like, well, that planet does have water. They found one the other day. This planet the other day. I watch a lot of science stuff, and I read a lot of science stuff.
Yeah.
Not UFO stuff, but stuff that they've actually concrete science.
Yes.
Right, but the thing is,
I'm interested enough in that. Like, I like finding out about planets that could sustain life or whatever. I believe in all that stuff, and I find it interesting.
Why are you interested in that? That's not going to affect your life.
No, but it's interesting enough. Like, if I'm bored, I'll read about it. Like, it is interesting because it's, other planets. Like, I'm as interested in that as I'm interested in, like, the other planets of our solar system, which is to say, not a whole lot, but I find it interesting enough. But I'm not going to spend all of my time and effort.
Let's do this in another way. One evening, you step out into your garden.
Yeah.
Okay. And and just as the sun's going down in the sky, you see these weird dancing lights.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, you get your wife and she comes out and you look up in the sky and you're looking at each other and you're like, what the fuck is this? And what do you think? What's your first feeling about that?
Well, that just what you said. I'd be like, oh, what the fuck is this? And I would probably stand there and look at it a bit longer. But like, what do you want me to do with that otherwise?
But would you think it was aliens, maybe?
Well, I might, but, I'd probably... At first, I would probably think it was something else, like I'd think, oh, maybe it's like an airplane or like, some sort of like military thing or whatever, my first go-to wouldn't be like, oh my God, the invasion has started.
Right. I mean, mine wouldn't be because
I have to prepare my ass for
I don't
the
think
probes.
it's even likely that they'd get here. Like, it's so ridiculous that they would find us, travel here.
Yeah, but you're seeing it with your eyes, right?
Right, but am I seeing it? This is definitely an alien ship landing.
Well, that's you have no way of knowing. You see blinking lights in the sky, or something moving around weird in the sky.
Right, that I'm getting that. It could be anything.
You saw it, you filmed it, and then you looked on the people on the internet and news about it, and there was no news about it. There was no information about it. You said it to the government. They didn't reply. They said this is nothing.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Said, don't worry about it. Go back inside. You didn't see anything.
Yeah, like when there's no
right. But what have they seen?
And then the men in black turn up at your front door and they probe you.
Probe.
I'm being probed.
I'm being probed.
Oh no, mommy.
Hello, is that the government? I've been probed. I'll put you through to the probing hotline, sir. Hold on 1 minute, please. What hold music would they play on the probe hotline?
I don't know, dude, the X-Files theme tune. Right, so when do you think the first UFO sighting was in history?
In all of history?
Define UFO, that they thought it was an alien or they didn't know what it was?
Things in the sky, unknown shit flying around.
The first time they flew that hot air balloon or whatever.
Right, so when was that?
1820 or something like that.
Miles out. The first one was in Rome.
Right.
There's Roman histories, and in fact, UFO sightings throughout history at every time period.
Right, but hold on. We're just talking about something is in the sky and people don't know what it is.
I can tell you. Look, in the work of the historian Livy, who was writing in the 1st century BCE, is packed with weird shit spotted in the sky above Rome. They saw a ball of fire, phantom ships flying in the sky, and some men in white standing before an altar.
All right, see, this is all bollocks.
Okay, wait up. So before the Battle of Milvian Bridge, the Emperor Constantine saw a cross of light in the sky above the sun.
Can I, just before you continue, can I just say, because I know Flax is very bewildered by my this is the kind of shit that turns me off of it, Flax. I'm interested enough if there's aliens and stuff, but it's this shit that puts me off.
No, this is
shit
nonsense.
that on principle I don't want to be a part of.
What do you
don't
mean
want to be.
puts you off?
I believe in aliens, and now I'm lumped in with these fucking maniacs that come up with
not
this
at
shit.
all. What I'm saying
that's my point I'm trying to make.
I'm saying the question was that if this turned out to be definitively, yes, aliens have actually been here, your response was, who Who cares? It doesn't want to change my life.
But I just explained why my response is that.
Oh, right. So are you saying you don't want to be a tinfoil hat? You don't want. So are you saying you do believe in aliens, but you don't want to admit it because you don't want to get lumped in with all the crazies?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. That's fair. Distancing.
Right. So it's a defensive mechanism. I don't want anyone to think, hang on a second, this is a guy that I can, hey, let's go to the pub and I'll share all my crazy ideas with you. No, I'm not him. I don't believe in it.
You like the idea
but
of aliens,
I would find
but
it
you don't
interesting enough if they did actually exist. I would be like,
so are you
cool.
a closet alien believer?
No,
it's okay
I wouldn't.
to do that.
No. Again, the defenses have gone up again.
He is not.
I am not. I am not. So don't get any funny ideas out there,
I think you've
Internet.
dug yourself out of this hole. It's fine.
Okay.
So Emperor Constantine saw a cross of light in the sky above the sun with words in Greek reading, "In this sign, conquer." Obviously, in
bollocks. Obviously,
in the Bible,
bollocks.
well, it's bollocks, but he saw it and he was written down.
Who
and
gives a shit?
This is not just a one-time thing.
Hey, Flax is coming around to my way of thinking now, see?
Thousands of people have seen shit in the sky.
Yeah, and it's always bollocks. It's always bollocks.
Well, now, hang on.
Nobody has seen.
Okay,
I don't believe any of that shit. Honestly, from back then, all those historical accounts.
What was the first UFO sighting in the US? I can tell you. It was in 1639. James Everell, a sober, discreet man, so we're told. He was on the Muddy River near Boston when he and two companions saw a great light in the sky. It stood still, then flamed up. It was about 3 yards square, and then it ran across the sky and contracted into the figure of a pig. A pig-shaped entity would spend several hours reportedly zooming back and forth along the river and Charleston as swift as an arrow.
Absolute balls.
When the incident was over, the gentleman found that their boat had been carried a mile along the river against the tide.
Bollocks.
That is the first UFO sighting in America. Okay?
I'm calling it bollocks. I'll keep saying it.
I hear this, right? But what I'm saying is that there are thousands of these sightings throughout history. But
yeah. People have been drinking and imbibing and taking drugs for a very long time.
Listen, before flying, people saw different shit. In 1609, there was someone who saw a large gourd in the sky above Korea.
Right.
In 1668, someone saw a silver lizard above Slovakia.
Yes.
People were seeing a lot of ships, a lot of like globes, crosses, rods, like a lot of things that they recognized as things. So it was usually spears, smoky clouds, like houses.
Wait. So they see this shit up there, and because they haven't got aeroplanes and jets,
they didn't have an explanation.
Yeah, so they were like, "What is that up there?" And they were like, "It looks like a pig," because that's all they've fucking seen is pigs and spears and gourds.
I've seen a plow in the sky.
Yeah, exactly, because that's their frame of reference is pigs and gourds and plows. And they see some unexplained aerial phenomenon. And they're like,
of course, flag in the veil.
I think that's a pig up there flying around.
And I think a lot of these things are actual space stuff, like meteorites or aurora borealis or things like this. Because that sometimes does happen further down south or further up north than it would usually do. And that can be very strange. Like eclipses were always very confusing to people. They were very strange, very confused about what that was. But there's also lots of things like you mentioned earlier, P-Flex. There's a couple called there's things called sun dogs where
there's all kinds of weird light phenomena.
It looks like it has two more suns. There's like a thing called will-o'-the-wisp, which certainly happens like marsh gas. A lot of people talk about marsh gas. And things like that. And certainly in the fog, lots of strange things that look weird. Ball lightning is a thing that is a thing. There's also this thing called Fata Morgana. I don't know if I've said that right, but when it's a mirage that happens when cold air gets trapped between warm air, and it looks like the sky is reflecting what's on the surface. So
I prefer I'm a big fan of Fata Morgana.
Yes,
dummy thick Morgana.
Dummy thick Fata Morgana. So there is actually like explanations, but and obviously good old mass hysteria. But of course, like and that leads you on to like the idea of when the airships and balloons, like you said, were starting to be made, and in fact, that kind of had this incredible effect on people, right? So, for example, in 1909, there was a man named Wallace Tillinghast. Okay.
What a name!
He told the Boston
Hail to
Herald.
you, sir. It is I, Wallace Tillinghast.
He said,
I wish to sup here at your premises.
He told the Boston Herald he had flown an amazing new plane 300 miles from Worcester, Massachusetts to New York City and back, 3 times further than anyone else had managed at the time. And really, in the real very early age of flying, he was one of the only people who had a plane. And in fact, he didn't have a plane.
No.
He lied. There was no evidence that he ever had a plane. However, no one saw him on the original flight, but in the weeks and months afterwards, 2,000 people claimed to have seen him flying his plane on further flights between Worcester, Massachusetts and New York City. And he hadn't. He didn't exist. He didn't fly at all.
I love it.
So it's a very, very common thing. The other thing is people, once flying machines were invented, people kept blaming certain people, UFOs. People kept seeing UFOs in the sky, and they before flying machines were even invented. Thomas Edison was so sick of getting the blame because people thought he had invented a flying machine.
Yeah.
That he had to issue a strongly worded statement denying having invented anything that flies because everyone was blaming him for all the UFOs they were seeing in the sky.
I hate when
Please
that
don't
happens.
mix me up with that Tillinghast fool. Fool, sir! I flew around the Statue of Liberty at 4,000 feet. It was all at night time, so you wouldn't have seen it, but I definitely did it.
This was stuff that was happening constantly. There was a guy in 1896 who saw two men pedaling a slow-moving light in the sky 1,000 feet up.
Wow. Good eyesight.
Another man saw it land, came across it on the ground, and met some Martians who tried to kidnap him.
Yes.
However, the strapping fella in question was too strong and fought them off and escaped.
Of course he did.
Ridiculous. I just love the idea that the Martians have a fucking flying bicycle. Like, that's what they...
Well, that's what people saw as flying machines back in the day, and so that's what they saw in the sky. And then what happened after that was the First World War with Zeppelins. The Germans had one Zeppelin, but thousands of people reported seeing airships in the skies over their... This was before World War One, but then during World War One, they actually did send a bunch of Zeppelins over to raid.
And no one saw them. The ultimate irony.
Wow, yeah, they did have... But this was the thing, like, once World War One and World War Two happened, there was this fear... The skies were...
dangerous.
Scary.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly, because there were flying bombs, there were silent flying bombs, there were V-2 rockets coming over, it felt like you could die from something from the sky at any time. And certainly with bomb shelters and aerial raids and things like this, like, there was this whole culture, certainly in Britain, that sort of created this idea of fear of the above. Okay, so the ufology founding myths happened very shortly after that. In 1947, there was a pilot called Kenneth Arnold. He was an amateur pilot, but he was, quite a sober guy. He claimed that he saw 9 shiny disc-shaped objects flying around 1,200 miles per hour past Mount Rainier, not far from Seattle.
I know Mount Rainier. I've seen it.
He was a sober and respectable man, not prone to exaggeration, so the reporters who interviewed him wrote the story up pretty straight. The resulting coverage led to the popularization of the phrase flying saucer as a description for UFOs. And poor Kenneth Arnold, who thought he'd seen some secret military technology, seemingly wishing he'd kept his mouth shut, because 2 weeks later, a public information official in Roswell, New Mexico, did the exact wrong kind of thing you're supposed to do when involved in a conspiracy to cover up the existence of alien life, and issued a press release saying that the military had discovered the debris of a flying disc. So he immediately, a military official, reported that, flying discs had been discovered. The next day over in Texas, someone higher up the chain of command clarified that the objects recovered were remnants of weather balloons and radar reflectors. They showed the wreckage, which weighed only a few pounds and was made of rubber strips, tin foil, rather tough paper, and sticks, which doesn't sound particularly alien. But the US Army, they'd already announced they had a flying saucer, and trying to walk it back didn't work. So it just continued to grow and grow and grow. In 1978, there was another thing that happened, which was Jesse Marcel, who's a lieutenant colonel, told ufologist Stan Friedman that it was non-Earth material, not Earth. So it's exactly the same as what happened today, okay, except this was 50, 60 years ago. He said that this guy, and it was 30 years after Roswell, after this thing was debunked. He's, a lieutenant colonel, someone who's actually pretty senior, said to a UFOologist that this is not of this world. And obviously this again spawned this huge amount of UFO fever, this kind of conspiracy theory, which is in the book I'm reading. The book's called Conspiracy. I found it in the airport and I read it on the plane, and it was interesting. But it's got all the conspiracies in it. But this is the chapter on space that we're doing. And God, like it's fascinating, right? And obviously then the 1990s came, and Area 51, which is not far from an Air Force test site in Nevada, although 700 miles from Roswell. It's not actually that close to Roswell. Was this thing that again was actually genuinely a secret test site, and as a result, everyone assumed that was where all the UFO stuff were.
Right.
And the US military sort of didn't really want to talk about it, didn't really want to give proper answers about what was there, and so was not very good at debunking these alien conspiracies. And
right. So here's my question. If this stuff nowadays, we're believing it because we feel now, I think, oh, we're so smart and we know all this stuff and science has advanced so much that we're not going to make these mistakes. Like all these things you've listed, in 200 or 300 years' time, I'm sure that the stuff that we claim to have seen, people will be saying, well, that can be clearly explained as this, that, and the other. Like our understanding of the atmosphere and shit that you see and human perception is still not perfect. Like we've got a very good idea about what things are and how it all happens, but how people perceive things and why we're so shit at deciding what something is still, it's not like a hard science, I don't think. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but the way, like you said, all the things you've listed and the way people saw them back then, they see something and your brain tries to make sense of it, and it's like, that's a flying saucer, because we've been told that there are flying saucers. But if you go back to the Roman times, you look up and it's, that looks like the spear of Athena or whatever. They don't fucking know, so we're always just trying to make sense of things.
Like you said, people need an explanation, right?
Yeah,
right. Because that's a tangible thing that we can do something about, right? And we can take action on. Like if we don't know what something is, we're paralyzed. And if you've seen these things in the sky and there's no good thing that explains them, and the government doesn't want to talk about their spy planes that have been sent to monitor Soviet nuclear tests, or other stuff that they don't want to tell you about, then UFOs fill the gap.
So here's my question: if this, I know that they've just decided to, like I was saying about to desecretify a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
If it turns out that we really do have exotic materials, bits of spacecraft from aliens, it begs a few questions. First of all, why are they so shit at flying that they're crashing? That's honestly question number one, is how is it possible for them to travel this far? Are they just in their early days of NASA phase of reaching out to other inhabited worlds where they found us? And this is the equivalent to, I think it was either Chinese or Japanese. I think it might have been Japanese lunar lander that fucking crashed on the moon, like blew up, and they're like, ah, shit, we fucked that up. What if that is where they are now for this? If you know what I mean.
Is it. These are such interesting questions, aren't they? Because where exactly, you're like, if we were to send a probe to a random planet,
it's going to blow up. It's going to fucking blow up.
It might not go great.
We're not going to make it. We miscalculated. Sorry, we were wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, the materials were wrong. What if that is why we've got this shit? It's because this is their early fumbling steps at exploring other worlds. And they've looked at us through their super telescope, and they're like, oh, it looks like there's fucking an atmosphere there. And there might even be life. Let's go check it out. And they send over their probe, and of course it fucking crashes because it's had to travel light years to get here. And now we're left with these bits of metal and, or whatever it is, exotic materials. And we're like, aliens are here. They've been here. I don't know if they would travel that far. I don't know if it's possible. They might just be sending over little probes or drones or something. And maybe as the years go by, their shit gets better. But it still is fascinating to think. From my perspective, the thing I'm most interested in is, first of all, that there is life in our neighborhood, which is amazing if we had neighbors. That would be amazing. Second of all, they might share some technology with us and say, hey, we figured some stuff out that you guys haven't.
Yeah.
And maybe we've even figured out some stuff that they haven't. You never know. And they would be like, oh, this is amazing. And thirdly, that they were able to find us and that we could communicate with them. Just imagine the entirety of our world history, all our art and culture, all our music, Imagine if there's another group of people out there who have all their own stories and history and music and culture that we could do an exchange, and you could read about the history of Garbon 4.
Yes.
Like, and it'd be like, wow, this is like a whole new history. And you'd have people studying alien history and learning all about all their myths and legends and everything. It would be incredible. They might even have a whole bunch of movies we've never seen. We'd have to get them dubbed into English because they'd all be in Glarbon, but they'd be bloody good movies, I bet. I want to see that. I want to see what someone else has been up to. The idea that someone else has evolved and is similar to us, that they're sending out probes and they're fascinated by what's out there. They're intelligent. We could communicate with them. Endless possibilities. My imagination goes crazy. So that's why I'm interested.
What if they're just killer bugs, though?
Well, of course, but why would killer bugs send metal probes?
Because they just want to conquer the entire universe.
You would just send a pod
Yeah.
that lands and out pop the
You've got
spiders,
to assume
and
that
you're
if
away
they've
with it.
figured out how to get off their planet and survive in space, and they are biological, and if they're not, if they've, you know, that's one of the human sort of ways that you could think that we would transfer ourselves into robot bodies to survive the roughness of space. You know, I think you have to. There's a lot of work and effort and energy. But almost look at how little we're spending on space exploration right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, look how much trouble the Earth is in. We can't afford to look up. A lot of people don't look up, and that's actually even part of this theory. Really, is like that most people don't even look at the sky unless they have something to look at. Right?
I look at the sky all the time. I look out my window and there's the sky. But do you know what it's filled with? Planes going into Heathrow. That's all it is, all day long.
Well, not so much this summer, by the sounds of things.
Why? What's happening this summer?
There's a lot of strike action going on.
Oh, Heathrow.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That could be painful.
So, do you want to know where the Men in Black comes from? That the idea of these
Men in Black.
So apparently, following the Watergate
Galaxy
scandal,
Defender. Go on.
This government black helicopter became this symbol of faceless government authority.
Yeah.
And you know, these unmarked helicopters would fly around and do stuff, right? And so they became this kind of idea. But apparently, one of the things that was happening was in 1995, the Idaho Congresswoman Helen Chenoweth,
Yes,
told the New York Times that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was landing black helicopters on ranchers' land in order to enforce the Endangered Species Act at gunpoint. She held hearings on it and everything. So apparently this was a thing that was happening. These black helicopters were flying around in backcountry America just to get out to these wild areas, I guess, and make sure that
people would just get off the
ranchers
helicopters with guns and say, "Stop endangering these animals'
Stop
lives."
endangering the species.
Yeah, I think so.
And they'd say,
I
"We'll
think there's
do."
a little bit of
You could have
Bader-Meinhof
called. You could have just
here
called
as well, right? Like chemtrails are a bit of a. So the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon is the tendency to spot something more often once you're aware of it.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time, right? Like I learned about this thing the other day, and then suddenly I'm seeing it everywhere, and I'm like, damn, did I just gloss over this before?
Are you sure it's Bader-Meinhof?
That's what it says here.
Because that was
yeah.
like a German group.
I don't know. Maybe this is what it says in this book. Anyway,
Yeah, I get that. I remember after we had our first kid, I was like, wow, everybody's having babies. But it's only because I was aware that we'd had a baby. You know what I mean? Like before that, I hadn't really paid any attention to babies.
It's like when you buy a new set of trainers, you're suddenly like looking at everyone else's trainers.
Yeah, everybody's copying me. I got them first.
But the thing is that Bader-Meinhof was I think they were like a German terrorist organization or something like.
Are you thinking of something different? The thing is, these things are all very
the Red
very
Army
different.
faction, the Bader-Meinhof group, which is Baader Meinhof, was a West German far-left Marxist-Leninist urban guerrilla group founded in 1970.
Jesus.
Oh,
So
there you go.
I don't think it's. Is it Bader-Meinhof?
Yes, this phenomenon was named after them because someone on an online message board heard about Bader-Meinhof, the terrorist group, and then started seeing them everywhere and wrote a story about their experience.
I see.
And so, right, it's called frequency illusion. That's a better way to say it, I suppose.
Okay.
It's like one of these cognitive biases or whatever. Chemtrails is a classic thing, though. Like planes always leave trails, but people didn't notice them until they thought they were some sort of psychological, chemical population control, some bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the moon landing is another one, which is a really interesting conspiracy.
No, it's not. It's idiots.
Well, but the thing is, like, what happened was, whenever anything big happens, there's always a small group of people. So this happened with the Soviets as well, right? There was this there was this theory in Soviet Russia at the time that they hadn't sent a man into space. There's people who were resistant to that, right? In the same way that people in the US were resistant to the idea that the moon landing was real.
Right.
Like, people just sometimes don't want to believe.
But how much of it was the movie Capricorn 1? Because that film, with Elliot Gould and a bunch of other people, Telly Savalas is in it, O.J. Simpson is in it, oddly enough, is about the faking of a moon landing where they film it.
Oh,
right?
it's probably part of it.
That came out in 1977.
Yeah.
So
Apparently,
I don't know if that was a big.
Apparently, it was still a fringe conspiracy until 2001, when Fox News broadcast a documentary under the title "Did We Land on the Moon?", which was hosted by
Tucker Carlson, was it?
It was hosted by Mitch Pileggi, who was the bald guy from the X-Files.
Yeah, fucking idiot. I mean, the thing is, yes, Mitch Pileggi. So the thing is, he's just an actor. Like, he's not a source of information.
Yeah, but people had watched a lot of the X-Files, and
of course.
Things like the X-Files did a lot of work for this sort of.
Yes, the X-Files popularized it for this sort of our generation, I think. The idea, because conspiracy theories have always been around. The JFK assassination, for example, I was literally thinking about that this morning, because it was just one of those things that just popped into my mind. A friend of mine is very into JFK conspiracy stuff, not as a nut, but he's just interested in trying to figure out what about this stuff is actually true,
right?
And he's trying to keep a distance from the lunatic fringe, who you will see if you go to the location of the shooting in Dallas. There are people selling their manifestos about what happened and stuff.
Really?
Which is quite funny.
Yeah, I'm
like
not surprised.
Hand
I'm not
printed,
surprised.
where they just go to, you want to buy my explanation for how to get him? Government's trying to take over.
You probably get people like that at like Ground Zero and stuff like that.
100%. 100%. They're just grifters, they're just trying to make some money from selling their bullshit theories.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I think conspiracy theories now, the internet obviously created these communities, much like groups of far-right nuts have been able to congregate together and find forums and websites where instead of just having to go to a group meeting with a bunch of people in your area and be a fascist bastard, now you can do it online from the comfort of your home. So it's a lot easier. It's the same with conspiracy nuts, and there's a big crossover between
the thing about it is
the far right and conspiracy theories.
Sometimes it's written very well, and it's written in a very convincing way, and sometimes they layer it on. They're like, well, aliens are real, and also chemtrails and crop circles, and
I've layered on some conspiracy theories. Right?
They definitely, and they use very modern language to make it sound convincing, but the thing is about it that's the most interesting to me is looking at the history and just seeing how history repeats itself. Right?
Yeah,
there's always been credible people from the military. Even fucking Buzz Aldrin was talking about it.
No.
Was it Buzz Aldrin?
No. So wait. Not saying like there's a misappropriated. I think that's the word. Misattributed quote where he's saying that we didn't go to the moon. Are you talking about that one or the fact that they saw? Remember. So they saw when they were on one of the flights. I think it might have been Buzz Aldrin or it might have been Neil Armstrong. When he took an early flight around the Earth, he said that he could see all these sort of stars and things around the capsule.
Right.
And everybody was like, "Oh, that's aliens. They've sent out their little aliens to have a look at us while we're in space."
Well, of course they did.
But it's not. It was just all bits of like sparks and debris and shit like that. Like it's very easily explained.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. They've co-opted that story, and that's what I had heard and believed.
Right.
It's very easy for you to not check this stuff and just to have it all piled on and make it. And I mean, the UFO community. I mean, obviously some are like the flat Earth, but you can see it in flat Earth as something which is completely bogus, but yet the way they present it sucks a lot of people in. And you can just imagine that you can use that as a template and be like, look, this is bollocks. They're doing it here as well, but with UFOs, it's harder to say that it's definitely not the case because there's no it's like religion. It's hard to disprove it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Flat Earth in particular, the reason I think it appeals to a lot of people, I follow a couple of Twitter accounts that sort of debunk Flat Earth stuff and debunk evolution stuff. So these are people who will say things like the famous question, and you can Google this, and the answer is right there. If we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys, right? It's like one of the number one questions that these anti-evolution nuts say. And for Flat Earthers, the main thing that they have is, well, the Earth looks flat to me, And there's a combination of distrust in anyone telling them that something is the case. If they can't see it with their own eyes, how could it be true? And that is the essential nature of the flat Earth theory, is that if you stand on the Earth and it's flat, the Earth is flat. They don't understand the scale of the planet. How far away or how high you'd have to be to see the curvature. You've really got to go up to near space. You can't see it from an airplane. You are too low to see the curvature of the Earth. It is such a big thing. You cannot wrap your tiny brain around it. And unfortunately, a lot of people have this ego where if they can't see it, they don't understand it. It's obviously just not true. It's much easier for them to believe that it's not true and we're being lied to because they can imagine that and they can understand that, but they can't understand something that they can't see with their own two eyes. And that's the problem, I think, with science as we get more and more advanced is you cannot explain it to the average person. You can't demonstrate it to them, so they just don't believe it.
Right.
They think it's a load of bollocks. And that's where a lot of these conspiracies
What's the benefit of believing that the Earth is flat, though? Like, what
exactly?
What's the point? Like,
it's affirming for other people,
you're
for you
in
to
on
see
something.
other people for you to be right, and for you to be surrounded by people in a community, right?
Right.
Who also believe that.
But even if you're not in the community, Lewis, I think the important thing is that I honestly think it's ego. I honestly think people's egos are so fragile, and a lot of conspiracy theorists are very fragile people mentally. They're very fragile. They're distrusting. They're scared all the time. They're paranoid. They think, and they're stupid, and they probably know they're not very bright. You'd have to be particularly stupid to believe the Earth is flat. You really would. I mean, if you even look casually at some of these videos, and I've watched a lot of them, and I've seen all these fucking flat Earth memes. I'm all over it. I love reading about it, and for a while, I talked about this before. I was really into it because I was fascinated at how something so stupid could become so popular. They're just not very bright, and they don't want to admit that they're not very bright. They act like they're
absolutely
educated.
And I think that the people who fall for UFOs and actually believe it are probably less. It's not the same. But it's easier to fall into because even smart people, like lieutenant colonels in the military and senators, also are believers, right?
Right, but they didn't know how
you can
Facebook
be smart
worked.
and also fall for this stuff, right?
I mean, we saw with the TikTok hearings that the idea that a senator said this, they're fucking morons. They're absolute morons. I saw the TikTok guy in the US being grilled. He was like, "You're telling me that TikTok is on my Wi-Fi right now?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, what is it doing on my Wi-Fi?" The guy doesn't know. He doesn't know what Wi-Fi is. He doesn't know what the internet is. Why is he asking these questions? But this is the problem. Is that this guy will not accept. I don't understand how this works. Explain it to me. He's made up in his mind how this works. He knows what's good and bad. And I think that's the same problem with a lot of these conspiracy nuts. A lot of these UFO people, I think, are just wishful thinkers. I think it's relatively harmless. And I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as the people who think the government is out to get them. And almost inevitably, it's an anti-Semitic conspiracy. The Jews are controlling our minds as usual. That's the way a lot of these conspiracy theories go.
Oh my God, that was the very first thing in this book, actually. Yeah. The very first thing in this book, the first conspiracy theory ever is about it was in 1144, the first anti-Jewish conspiracy. And the Jews have had an awful time throughout 1,000 years of conspiracy theories about them being behind fucking everything.
It's still the number one root of all of these conspiracies, and I've said this before, the further down you dig, the quicker you get to anti-Semitism. It's unbelievable.
It's partly because in medieval times, the Jews were kind of going around, and they were the new people in these villages, right? And then when something went wrong, it was like, let's blame the new people,
right.
The people who are the minority, or the people who were on the fringe, or the people who were doing their own different religion to ours, And as a result, they got this kind of they were the scapegoat for
but also
anyone.
Catholicism, like I think it was Martin Luther, was a big anti-Semite, like hated the Jews because of course a lot of Catholics and by extension then probably a lot of Christians felt that the Jews were the ones who had killed Jesus, like they'd got him killed. So they saw them as their sort of enemy, if you like.
And this is obviously, this conspiracy theory, unlike UFOs and Flat Earth, is terribly damaging.
Exactly. This is not some harmless shit. This is like awful. But here's another one for you. Here's another one for you. The reason that people always associate Jews with banking, right? And, a lot of people nowadays on the left still do this, is this idea that, they've always been into money. Everybody used to lend money. And then the church, the Christian church, said, usury and lending money is against God. Jesus was against it. Look, it's right here in the Bible. He turns over all the money lenders' tables. So who was left to lend money? People who weren't Christian. Who was not Christian living in your country back then? Probably Jews. So they started banks, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, those fucking, the penny pinching Midas Jews. That's where that came from. So it's always been there, and it's still alive and well now.
Okay, so this is actually how the very first, you're doing it properly here. So what happened was there was this kid. No, his name was William from Thorpe Wood near Norwich. Okay, which obviously doesn't exist anymore because of us cutting it down over the years.
Yeah,
but
we've got to make those votes.
He was a 12-year-old boy who was found dead in 1144. Now, what happened was this knight had borrowed a load of money from the local Jews because that was the only person he could borrow it from. He went off on one of the Crusades, came back unsuccessful, and owed a load of money. So he killed the Jew to avoid paying him back,
Jesus.
and was perfectly open about it. And he said the reason I killed the Jew was because he had sacrificed this boy in some demonic ceremony.
That's
and
still like, a conspiracy theory to this day.
It's still and he exactly, and that set off a chain of events that he got out of it because he blamed the Jew of being this, awful person,
right?
Child killer. He everyone started basically blaming everything on the Jews.
You guys have played Crusader Kings, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember you can borrow money from the Jews in your kingdom and then expel them?
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay them back. That's literally in the game.
That's literally in history.
Because that's what they used to do. They'd borrow a load of money and then be like, you know what? Get them out of here. And we don't owe them money. Who? And then you'd let them back in a few years later and you do the same thing again. Like they were gaming it just the way I do in CK2.
Yeah. These kind of small effects have a ripple, right? And they get written about. And, and people wrote these long treatises on how the Jews had done this terrible child killing, and stuff like this. And so they kind of percolate and permeate through the centuries, and they feed each other, right? As a reputation. You hear about this story, or you read this book, or someone's written this thing and people are educated that this was the truth. This happened. And and so people are stupid. Yeah, they don't know.
Do you know what the weird thing
is? Of course, there's no child sacrifice in Judaism.
Right. But here's the weird thing, is that the way that this is really popular. I see this fucking on TikTok all the time. Luckily, I don't see it in its raw form, but I see it in the debunking form. So people doing a stitch with these idiots saying things like, this is a famous one, look at all these pyramids all built around the earth at the same time. And nowadays, we don't know how to build pyramids. So how did they do it back then? We absolutely could build a fucking pyramid, dude. Okay, we could build a pyramid. There's no technology that's gone into pyramid making that is beyond us.
Yeah, they built one in Vegas, didn't they?
We built one in Vegas, right there, baby.
There you go.
There's one in Dick's Sporting Goods, isn't there, in Texas?
Very big one, right?
Yeah.
So
and it's like
this is a popular
shop.
thing that we don't know how to do these things nowadays. The aliens knew. Where did this knowledge go? Also, there's this thing, I think it's called the Cathar or something like that, which is this idea that there was this ancient civilization and there's still evidence of it today. And they built buildings. We don't know how they built them. We don't know how to replicate them. We absolutely do. Okay, you could not show us a single building throughout history that modern technology and engineering could not also build, and the materials that they use are the same fucking ones we could use nowadays. It's laughable. So, I've forgotten where I was going with this. But
no, but what you're saying is that basically these they use all these tricks, because if you're someone who is talking to someone who's a conspiracy theory nut, they'll say, well, what about this? And you'll explain that. And they'll say, well, what about this? And you're like, oh my God.
Oh,
okay.
I've remembered.
They catch you on like one thing, right? That you're not ready for.
Yeah.
And then,
like,
and then you feel
See?
like,
Can't explain that one, can you? Huh?
I lost the whole conversation.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. If the further away it happened, the more gravitas it has. And I think if you can point to look, they've been writing about this since the 15th century. You're like, wow, as if we knew more back then. I would be less interested in something written in Roman times, an account of something as being true. It'd be fascinating because it's historical, but I wouldn't say, wow, they wrote about this in Roman times. It must be true. I'm like, no, it's far less likely to be true and accurate than it would be nowadays. We have far more capacity to understand things nowadays than they did back then. So I don't know why people always put gravitas on stuff that happened in the past. And I think the conspiracy theory about the Jewish sacrificing babies, obviously that came from the past, So in a way, it has that gravitas of the past, as in it's important somehow because it's
written
old.
down, right?
Exactly.
So it
This
must
has been
be
in
real.
a book from
Just because something was
1400.
written down, it must be real. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
It's interesting.
And that, you know, I guess, like, I don't want to shit on people who believe in things. Do you know what I mean? Because some of it is true.
Sure.
What,
some of this
about
stuff
the Jews
did
eating
happen.
children? Is that what it's...
Oh no! Like some conspiracy
Oh,
theories
okay.
are,
God, I
are
was-
true.
Whew.
Like the like US getting like, you know, testing drugs on people, or
Yeah.
you know, doing mind control experiments with LSD, or like
Right.
sending people in to do coups all over the
MK
place.
Ultra and all that shit, like that was, but that's the danger, I think, when we talk about what's the danger of these conspiracy theories really, is that you can basically, it's like saying fake news. You can have an actual conspiracy that is actually real and damaging and just say, oh, this is clearly just a conspiracy hoax. These guys are crazy. Like, you could sneak a genuine conspiracy under the radar quite easily if the only people investigating this shit are fucking deranged.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, you could see good. You could see harmless ones, and you could see harmful ones, like anti-vax. You know, not vaccinating your kids and then them dying of
Right.
measles is pretty bad.
Exactly.
Stuff like this, like, you know, I think that we live in a world of these alternative facts, which is kind of abhorrent to me. That even that phrase, right? Alternative facts just means opinions, and we
Right.
always respect my opinion. It's like, well, if your opinion is an alternative fact, then it's not really
It's not
very
an
helpful
opinion.
to anyone.
I think there are things you're allowed to have an opinion about. You can have an opinion about whether Liverpool should fire their manager, or you can have an opinion about whether semi-skimmed milk is as good as full fat.
Right.
Those are opinions.
I see.
Whether you like Marmite or not, that's an opinion.
Well, they're
right?
whatever they are, subjective, right?
Yeah.
Right.
They're subjective.
It's literally,
facts.
I do like it. I don't think it's as good. That's an opinion. But if you're talking about whether the Earth is flat or not, you are not allowed to have an opinion. You don't have an opinion. One is true, the other is not. You don't get
That's
to fucking pick. It drives me up the wall.
This is true. This is actually a good point. Thank you. All right, good. Wow, we've solved it. I think we've actually, now we can sit back. We put this podcast out.
It was another one of those ones where we fixed everything. What did we not fix today? Can we?
I think we
Yeah.
fixed conspiracy nuts.
Yeah.
So when you see on the front page of Reddit that some guy has seen something in the sky or filmed something in the sky or has some lieutenant colonels come out, just know that this has happened before, and it will happen again.
Yes.
And it's pretty unlikely until I see the president shaking hands with a little green man.
Or woman.
That I'm actually going to believe
No, it's
in any of
it's
it.
a tall, skinny gray man smoking weed in the president's face. That's what I'm going for.
I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Do you want to end the podcast, or do you want me to just read very quickly this email that I thought was good that Lewis forwarded
No,
to me?
please.
Oh yeah.
go
Okay.
for it.
Read a good email.
Okay, it's very long, so I'll sum it up for you guys. This is called the Great Stirrup Controversy.
Right.
All right,
Right.
This is from Matt. If I pronounce your name wrong, Matus, I apologize.
He has a YouTube channel.
Mateus.
Okay.
He has a laser history. His YouTube channel. Check it
Yeah.
out.
So his last name is Laser, which is fucking awesome,
Yeah.
by the way. So the idea is that so I'll summarize. This is the most interesting paragraph. The Great Stirrup Controversy is a large debate among medievalists about the scale of change the introduction of the stirrup brought about in Europe. This is a throwback to our ranking technologies episode.
So we
did.
glossed over stirrups in the best.
We glossed
Tech
way
episode.
over stirrups. I mean,
We
we
were
talked
like,
about the domestication of animals and stuff like that, which I suppose this would be a part of. But
He had a lot of problems with the rest of the podcast as well, but
Of
we're not
course.
talking about that.
But he has a BA and an MA in medieval history, so whatever, from Cambridge. Yeah, whatever, buddy.
Yeah.
We played Civilization, okay? So I think we know
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Well, we watched Game of Thrones as well, and I think there's.
And Game of
Oh,
Thrones, yeah. So the crux of the debate is that the introduction of the stirrup to Europe primarily by the invading nomadic tribes of the Avars in the 6th century brought about the development of feudalism. Before the stirrup, most European armies were infantry. The Greeks, the Romans, the Celts, all infantry-based. Cavalry existed, but small numbers, limited effectiveness, because they haven't got fucking stirrups. You do anything, you're going to fall off your horse. The stirrup turns up, and suddenly the most effective fighting force became the mounted horse rider. I know I saw a thing about cavalry as like the tanks of the era. Like, you cannot stand against these things. I mean, imagine 400 heavy horse, armored, with armored lads on the back charging
Oh,
you.
I
You're just a
can't.
peasant with a spear.
I would be so
You're
scared.
going to soil yourself straight away. It's not like in Braveheart where they win with some sticks. It's brutal. You're going to die to the heavy cavalry. Medieval heavy shock cavalry could not exist without the stirrup, and the most famous type of combat, jousting, would be impossible. As such, thanks to the stirrup, a class of horse-riding landed nobility emerged, which could traverse the countryside faster, collect taxes more efficiently, fight more effectively, and so there became a class divide and the birth of chivalry and feudalism.
Right.
So I thought that was
Fascinating.
interesting.
That is interesting, yeah. Man, they must have had to hype these guys up like to the gills, like to get them out there to fight. Kill people. You gotta really fucking hate somebody to kill them with a sword or a mace or whatever, right?
I mean,
like that
Is it still better than the internet or electricity or printing press, though? So fixed stirrups are still. would an alien race that didn't develop stirrups have managed to get here? Is what I'm asking.
So is that our first question? Tell us about your stirrups.
Well, we assume, I mean, rightly so, but we assume that any alien race is going to follow the same sort of path as we did, but they might be totally different.
Maybe they
us.
didn't ever get feudalism
maybe they
because
didn't
they
need
never
to,
got, they never had horses on their planet.
Yeah, maybe they just came like, maybe they're just like little puddles of goo who just did things differently.
I mean, I'm not sure that
exactly.
the advent of feudalism was a positive thing. I think it was a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, think how many people died because of
What, you think
feudalism.
that held us back?
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know, like you can't say it though like that. Like,
It was probably necessary at the time though, because I don't think anybody was ready to just skip over it and head directly into.
But consider this: what was the
Victorian
civilization?
What was the system of government that the Greeks and the Romans had? Right, they had a republic and democracy and shit.
Yeah.
You had elected people, you had senators and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we were like, nah, fucking kings, innit? Fucking
Yeah,
kings.
but they were still going around and rounding people up and crucifying them, and they had the
you're gonna do what you're gonna do. What I'm saying is they did that under a monarchy, but I mean we still have the monarchy in this country today.
Yeah.
And you want to complain about that? Well, there you go. The fucking stirrup. There's your enemy. Tweet at stirrup. Fuck you.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's our podcast.
Very colorful ending to a very interesting. God, we really did. We fixed a couple of things. I was an interesting one though. I think we've spoken about bits and pieces of this stuff in the past, but never at length like we've done today.
This podcast isn't no such thing as a fish. Sorry, I went through and did a load of facts and read stuff out of a book.
No, it was good.
It was good. It was. I don't think a single poop joke was made or a dick joke either. So it's got. I mean. It's the first time for everything, right?
This is highbrow.
I enjoyed this airport book I bought. It's Conspiracy, A History of Bollocks Theories and How Not to Fall for Them by Tom Phillips and John Elledge.
Oh my God.
Elledge. There you go.
Do you think those guys get a lot of big, long biblical emails?
I have to credit them because I've read it literally out of their book. It's interesting. I've read another couple of books I can tell you about actually in the next couple of weeks. Been reading books. Anyway, I'll tell you about it next week.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, you do
All right,
that.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye then, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.